Hello, and welcome to the Way of Conscious Mindfulness, a weekly podcast and YouTube show discussing spirituality and science, balancing health and well-being with mind, body, and spirit, with a Daoist twist. The Tao means the way, the path, the balance. Now, we are not, surprise, surprise, the normal sort of show. Each week we have either a guest, as we do this week, or a subject, which we sort of do as well. And our aim is to have an open discussion to help us all find new skills, new techniques to balance our very own personal Tao. So this week co-wise, I'm on my own. I'm holding the banner. I'm flying the flag. There's a couple behind me. I'm flying the flag all on my own, but that's all good. It's all cool. So this week the show is the Way of Sifu Janeen, and the topic is about FengShui. Or some say it in a different way, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, good evening, sis. Well, good morning for you. I've got her up very, very early. She's in Australia, in the wonderful Gold Coast, and I've got her up at the crack of dawn. And her name's not even Dawn, it's Janeen. So, good evening, and how are you doing?
Good morning, how are you? Good to see you. And yes, I'm very good, thank you. I did have to get up at 4 a.m, literally the crack of dawn, to do your show. But look, it's a delight to be here. I've promised you for a long time I would do it, and here we are.
And indeed you have, and indeed you are, and it's awesome to have you on the show. So so I mean, well, we have known each other, oh blimey, a couple of years. See, well, actually, how long? 3 years?
Probably, maybe more like 5 or 6, I think.
Blimey!
Maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Time flies. Time
flies.
It
does. It does, because it was obviously, little plug, it was originally, I met you, I think it was at Enchanted Market, which is it's a great market in the UK for spiritual stuff, and it's just a great market altogether. And I remember originally having a reading from you, and then I did, I think I did a massage on you as well, and we sort of just connected, and that was really good. So so I mean, we know each other, but pretend we don't. So Janeen, what is your Tao? What is your way? What do you do?
Well, I think this is probably one of the hardest questions for anybody to answer, and certainly from my own perspective, it's a question I've contemplated, and I remember contemplating this as a very young child, even before I really understood the words theology or philosophy or anything like that. But if I was to say at this point in my life now what my Tao is, it's really about being in a service role and helping others. It's also, as we've spoken about, bringing content forward from one age of the earth to another. What are you spraying? It's like some happy mist. We'll talk about that. But so my personal Tao is that really to help others reach their full potential. And I think a lot of people actually have this purpose in life, or this mission, and they do it in many, many ways. You could be a tax accountant and still be in a service role. You don't necessarily have to be a doctor or a vet or something and cure sick people, but it's about helping people understand what their purpose is. I often call it soul alignment, so aligning people to where they're meant to be at this point in their life, and to helping them sort of understand why they're here and what it is they're here to learn. I think there's about 3 to 5 things as to why we're all here that we sign up for ahead of schedule. And so for me, it's about helping people achieve that. And one of the tools in my toolbox is FengShui. So FengShui is really an art and a science form that really helps align people to their own personal Tao, whatever it may be.
Yeah, indeed. So I mean, we'll get on to it because of what time restraints we have today. So what do you do in Feng Shui? What is, you know, what does it actually do? What is it?
What is Feng Shui? Yeah, it's one of the I think one of the most misunderstood areas. And a lot of that obviously is translation. It's originated from the East, but it's very much now embedded into the West. And with that comes some translation issues. But essentially what Feng Shui is, and I use the pronunciation of Feng Shui. I've heard others say Feng Shui, which is perfectly acceptable. Shui is not. It is a shui, like the way. But anyway, so the purpose of Feng Shui is about to physically align your environment, so your external qi. It's about balancing and harmonizing your external qi in order to support whatever your heart's desires are. So whatever you're looking to achieve in your life. And in Feng Shui, it is said, if you're trying to create too much change, it will result in chaos. So when I work with people, and they'll often come to me for one of 4 reasons, and those 4 reasons will be they're not at the right point in their career that they want to be, or maybe they're not in the right career, or there's career issues. They're not in the right relationship, bless you, or there's relationship issues. They're suffering some kind of health condition that's preventing them from living the life that they want. And the other one is financial flow, that they're not receiving the abundance from the universe that they want to have. So those are the 4 reasons that most people come. It could be 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of those, which will drive them into considering Feng Shui. And what we can do with Feng Shui is really look at their external environment, so the energy that they surround themselves with, and so their interiors, their home, their office, if it's career-based. We can, or also to retail, like if they own a shop, for example, or something like that. We can look at that external energy based on the principle that everything is energy. And we can look to balance that in order to promote what they want to do. And so there are 3 schools for Feng Shui, or you can consider them like schools of thought. There are 3 schools of thought in Feng Shui. And for any of your audience members looking to engage with a Feng Shui consultant after the show, you really need a consultant that is a master of all 3 of those, because they actually need all to be included. Those 3 schools are form school. Form school looks at the lie of the land, where the mountains are, where the water supply is. For in our modern world, we look at where are motorways, where are cemeteries, where are there, rubbish waste disposal dump sites, things like this. We look at where are there electricity pylons, towers. So that is form school, which looks at the lie of the land, and you consider you're like a bird and you're flying above your house and you're looking at all the different relationships and energy relationships around. The second school is compass school. Compass school, based on a traditional north, south, east, west compass. This follows your birth chart, and it aligns you, and it's different from male and female, but it really identifies where your best directions are for your particular birth chart and where your weaker or worse directions are. And I'll give you an example of this to put it into context. We have a very famous radio show host here in Australia, who I won't name. And he, first of all, was sacked from his television job. Then he then did an interview with somebody that went terribly wrong, and he was sacked from that particular job. And then his wife left him. And I phoned one of my students who was near to his location, and I said, you need to get in contact with him. He's sleeping in the 6 setbacks. So that is what happened. My student contacted this particular celebrity, or his management got onto him, and sure enough, he was sleeping in one of the worst positions on the compass score, which is called 6 setbacks, which is essentially one bad thing happens, but it compounds. So the next bad thing is twice as bad as the first one, and then the third is 3 times, so on and so forth, right the way. So that is compass score, and that's about looking at putting people in an energetic direction that is beneficial to them. Currently, I'm facing the southwest. And the reason I'm facing the southwest right now is because for me, in my personal birth chart, I'm a year of the horse, it is very stabilizing. So I want to be relaxed and able to talk freely for the audience. So that is why I'm looking in that direction. The third school of thought is called flying stars. Now, this is terribly translated, flying stars. What on earth is a flying star? It's not a shooting star, not a comet or anything like that. It's flying stars are really about the solar system. And as the planets move, and all of the planetary activity that's going on at the moment, we've got a lot going on with Jupiter, for example, just had a lot with Saturn. All of that energy going on in the solar system eventually comes to Earth. And the flying stars looks at that energy and the relationship it has to when your house was built. So essentially, Feng Shui masters who specialize, say, in flying stars, or all Feng Shui masters should be doing flying stars, but essentially we are astrologers that look at the composition of the soil when the property was built. So Feng Shui has those 3 specific areas. I often get asked the question, how much would it cost for me to know what you know about Feng Shui? And my answer is 12 years. It is a very intense subject, and sometimes the more you know, the more you need to know. And it really wasn't until about year 6 to 8 did I suddenly have that penny dropping moment where I suddenly understood, I get it. And from there, and that's why there's a lot of information out there about Feng Shui that is very contradictory. So, but you know, a lot of people will say, especially new people to Feng Shui will say to me, oh, but I read if I put a plant in my western balcony, then that's going to cause this to, well, there's so much involved that you actually can't just have a generic rule like that. And think of every property or every building as really having their own birth chart, just like you do. So essentially, you have to consider all of those factors. There's also some miscommunications that happened as Feng Shui spilled out around the world and traveled. So its first known use, the history of Feng Shui, was over 6,000 years ago, was when it was being used. And not when it was created, but when there is evidence to show that it's being used. So essentially, it is a very old art and science. It gets put into the New Age kind of category, although there is no spiritual dimension to it. So whether you're a Christian or a Catholic and you believe in God, whether you believe in Allah, Buddha, central source of consciousness, the universe, whatever your preferred term is, or whatever your belief system is, are all completely encapsulated within Feng Shui. And certainly I always say I'm not a minister and I'm not here to tell you what to believe in. It's really entirely up to you. But that belief system is completely embedded into your version of Feng Shui in your own environment. So a lot of Chinese or Japanese people that I work with will have very specific religious artifacts that they want specifically placed or given some kind of level of priority to based on their belief system, which you can do in Feng Shui. But as a whole, there's no spiritual dimension.
Yeah, and that's what was drawn me to you back all those years ago. Is the level that you understand the information. I mean, some people talk about feng shui, and yeah, you get that. Oh yeah, but it's this and it's that, and so, well, actually it's a little bit more than that. The whole point of it's actually, that's for me, the flying stars is the cool bit, because it is the birth, the birthright of your building, because it also, if I remember rightly, also if you'd like got a company, the actual doesn't the birthright of the company actually affect it as well? Is that right?
Yes and no. We would predominantly look at the physical location of the company, but
Right.
when people are creating new businesses, startups, and they don't have say for example they're working from home, a lot of business startups work from home. So in that sense, the date that the company is formed or registered with whichever authority in whichever country that they're in is significant, because it's essentially the company's birth date. And it will come into it, but if they were to then suddenly, if you take Facebook as an example, and it started in Mark Zuckerberg's student accommodation, and now it's got, all of these fabulous buildings around the world, we'd look at the individual building to really support the hopes, dreams and desires of that company and that company mission. But you're right, the flying stars is the coolest, and one of the reasons, I'll tell you why, it's because it's where all your interior colour palette comes from. So, for example, if you, maybe one day we'll do a special show and I'll let you see my house, but essentially, can you see that there's a wall behind me, and there's an image that's actually deliberately misplaced on that wall? It's hanging horizontally, and it should hang the other way, but there's reasons for that. Right. But anyway, the wall colour choice, it maybe looks white or cream or something like that on this kind of medium, but in reality it actually has a very high density of earth. And the reason being is because this is my office space where I work, and I always want to be very down to earth in all that I do. Very real, very realistic, very empathetic and understanding of clients' needs. And I can honestly tell you, I've honestly heard it all. And it's interesting, when I work with clients, everybody cries. Everybody cries. And the reason that happens is because we're at the core, or the rawness, or the root of what it is that is the key issue for them. And that evokes the emotion. Even the men, I know that there's a lot of thought about, or a lot of men are raised as boys to not cry. But I'll never forget a military man that came to see me, and he'd heard about me from a friend of a friend of a friend, because my work is only referral based, hence there's no direct links to my work on this particular show or anything like that. But he'd heard about me from a friend of a friend of a friend, and he'd had an experience. He was actually a pilot and in the Air Force, and he came to see me, and my driveway is on a hill that goes up, and as he came up in full uniform, this man just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and I thought, good Lord, he's going to eat me. So he was an absolute monster of a man, and very intimidating physically. But anyway, we moved away from that. So once we got speaking, he absolutely released everything and cried so much. And to me, that was so humbling to see such a physical man who comes from such an area where crying is not accepted, to honestly just allow that internal flow. And
that's cool. That is cool. Well, it's expressing yourself, letting it go. It's in my sort of Daoism. That's very much a thing. Is to be able to release that the child negativity, and release it, let it go, rather than hold it in. For those who don't know, is is a feng shui. See,
Shui. You shui.
I swear. There was somebody else I was talking to about today, and it's not feng shui. It's not shui. It's shui. But anyway, so is it used in business? Do the but do businesses use it?
So contemporary feng shui is used throughout all corporations, and so if you look at the Fortune 500 on the FTSE index, for example, you will find that that is 100% of those businesses utilize feng shui. And Donald Trump, I express no opinion when I say his name. Donald Trump is very famous in the feng shui world for saying, I don't understand feng shui, I just know it makes me a lot of money. So he's one of the biggest advocates. And I'm a huge fan of Oprah Winfrey. And on the entry to her Harpo Studios, for years and years, she had a sign outside to all audience members that were coming in, all staff, anybody involved in the show, guests, everybody. And it said, take control of the energy that you bring into my space. Now, if that is not feng shui, I don't know what is. So contemporary feng shui, it's used everywhere. It's used in hotel rooms, and hotels are often a really good way, because feng shui is about feeling. It's the way it makes you feel, and it's what is invoked in your internal chi that is important. And hotels are a great example of this, because everybody's had a good night's sleep in a hotel. Everybody's checked into a hotel and said, wow, I slept like a baby. That was the comfiest bed. I want to know where they get their linen. They've I could just move into that hotel room. Yeah. And then also people have had the absolute opposite experience, which is, I'll never stay in that hotel again. Everything about it was awful. I couldn't sleep. I barely slept, and they'll be miserable for their next day. And a lot of what that will come down to is whether or not the feng shui or the external energy in that environment was good for your energy. So did the building birth chart and the room birth chart balance with your birth chart? It will either be yes or no. So, as you know, I had a very big corporate career in my, or straight from graduating my first degree. So I have 3 degrees now, Paul. That is, I'm amassing them rather quickly. So I'm a big fan of academia, and and to be fair, to study feng shui, you have to have very good mathematics. There's a lot of mathematics involved to do it properly. But anyway, so I had a very big career, and that required a lot of travel in my 20s. And I would always ensure that whoever was booking my accommodation allowed me to check into a room where my head, so from my crown chakra, was in a direct position. So whether, for me, I'm Kua number 2, so that would be west, would be ideal. Southwest is okay. Northeast, northwest is okay. So I had lots of strange looks when I would arrive at the hotel, checking in, probably from a flight, so I looked very jet lagged, and they would say, yes, you're the person who wanted a west-facing bed. But sure enough, you know what, it allowed me to do my work better, and it allowed me to travel without it affecting my, in the mind, body, spirit, any of those dimensions.
Mm. Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, I spent, a fair bit of time on and off in China, and obviously my teachers were Daoist, and yeah, it's like one of the things you learn in the East is that big business, multi-million dollar businesses don't do anything. Like when they buy a new building, before they even buy the building, the first thing they do is they consult their master, their FengShui master, and there's a big it's a very interesting thing because obviously, you know, in the West, oh well, nowadays I think, as you said, the FT index companies, they all do it, but it's really interesting that you'll and also the war game, the mental war games that go on, that the businesses in China will face buildings in certain directions. There's certain,
especially
it's
banks. A bank, it's called a shooting arrow. So when you have a 90-degree corner of a building, so Bank A, who is in direct competition to Bank B, will build a building that points a shooting arrow directly to point B. Now, that is very typical in the East. It is not a karmic practice I would recommend at all. I don't feel that you need to damage a competitor to thrive. You should be focusing on what you do well and make that your key to success. Actually, I'm gonna can I read here? Everyone's probably heard of Jimmy Choo, the shoe man. You've heard of Jimmy Choo? I'm sure, Paul, you wear Jimmy Choos yourself. But obviously he's a very well-known fashionista, let's call him that. And this book here, you see this book here?
Yeah.
It's one of those keep it simple, stupid guide to Feng Shui. Okay, but what's interesting is that Jimmy Choo wrote the Jimmy Choo, who makes shoes, wrote the foreword. And this is what he said. He wrote, "Coming from a traditional Chinese family, I had always assumed that good Feng Shui is a very important part of any success. And I've always tried to ensure that my home and showrooms have had their Feng Shui checked by a master. I really believe that my luck and good fortune are due to my grandfather's good Feng Shui. Not only did my grandfather enjoy a good fortune throughout his life, but when he died, they buried him in an auspicious Feng Shui location to continue to bring luck to his sons and grandsons. Increasingly, when dealing with clients from the worlds of royalty, pop, and film, I hear mention of Feng Shui more and more." And then he goes on to say it's sometimes difficult to recommend where to get more information, and that's why he's doing the foreword to this book. So I think hearing it from somebody like Jimmy Choo, who is a successful businessman with obviously, as he said, a Chinese background, he's therefore embedded into a deep understanding. But for me, what is interesting about that, and I have to say this book was written, I should probably have told you that, it must be sort of in the 90s this book was written. I'd have to look it up. I actually have to be honest, it's so old, it's actually fallen apart. But, for him to say in the world of royalty, pop and celebrity, how much more common it is. And that is true. It is not now just something that is for Chinese people or Japanese people, or because you live there or because you come from there. It is now very much embedded into the Western world. And because it is more understood and it has been translated better, and there are people like myself, like you, Paul, that are here, as Sifus, or I prefer the term grandmaster, it doesn't really matter, but essentially to bring this information over, to make it comprehensible, and to help people understand, what it is and what they can do with it. So that being said, I've actually got something that everybody can do. And this is part of Compass School. And it's really about, because wherever you sleep, you're going to spend ideally 8 hours in that one set location. And it is from a mind, body, spirit perspective. It is your body's opportunity to heal and repair and do a lot more of the detailed work it doesn't get to do when you're up and active in the day. And so that's the purpose of sleep. So what we need to do is to cultivate the best quality sleep. So everybody can very easily Google their KUA or GUA number. Again, very, very bad translation. Sometimes it's spelled KUA and sometimes it's spelled GUA. I typically would call it KUA, but it doesn't really matter with a K. But if you were to Google KUA number and put your date of birth in, there are a million tools out there that would, you have to say whether you're male or female because it makes a difference. But there are a million tools out there that you can use to find this out. And you will find out where your 4 good directions are on a compass and where your 4 bad directions are on a compass. And so you just ensure that your bed aligns with one of those good directions, that your crown chakra is facing. And if you share a bed with somebody, a partner, husband, wife, spouse, whatever it is, or a partner, then essentially the rule of thumb is you go by the person who has the greatest income. So, and then you follow their KUA number. It's not always the male. You don't, if in a male-female situation, nowadays it's not always the male and you don't assume that. But also too, that's questioned if, for example, the person who's earning the least amount of money is suffering from bad health. You might want to reconsider that if they're having the issues. But if you're sleeping by yourself, you should be sleeping in one of your good directions. And it's one of the easiest things to find out. And always ensuring that your feet don't face the door, because that's how the Chinese carry out their dead. It's a symbol of death. And also, the more support that you have behind your head, so a headboard, full wall, you don't want to be sleeping against a window or a fireplace or anything where there is chi moving, because it's disturb your deep sleep, that REM sleep that you need.
Indeed.
So everybody can do that. So easy. And it will make, I've seen that change, just that one thing change lives.
Yeah, that's really. So Google, all you've got to do is Google KUA or GUA, so KUA or GUA number, and as Janeen said, so do that, and you need to know your, well, hopefully you know whether you're male or female, but that, you know, to put in male or female and your date of birth, and try it, find out. Find out. It's a very interesting thing, because it's a rare. I find it a very interesting thing because of the amount of people who I'm not sure naturally is the right word, but are not. You know, they're having lots of issues and they're not doing that. They're in they're in the opposite. They're in the opposing side. You know, their heads facing the opposing way. Or there's an issue like you're saying about like fireplaces. Even an old fire. If I remember rightly, even an old fireplace technically still has that same energy. So your head shouldn't still be facing in a fireplace. Even if the fireplace is no longer there, it'll be blocked up. It does technically still count. Is that right?
Yeah, like a building has a cellular memory just as humans do. So, and a classic example of this is happening just up the road from my own house here on the Gold Coast. A former funeral parlour has recently been transformed into a day spa. And and you can imagine their profit and loss statement is not looking too rosy. And the problem is, regardless of how much cleansing or clearing would be done in that property, there is so much sadness in that particular building. And it really is not a place that anyone could ever really relax.
Yeah, there's been similar things with like buildings that used to be slaughterhouses and things like that. Is that it's the whole thing of the energy, the vibration of that area. It's like there are places in China that have like the golden place or the golden palace. Is basically somewhere like for thousands of years they've been doing healing there and healing people, and there's a lot of qigong there, and they naturally say that the reason they'll always ensure that there's always been healing sanctuaries in that area is because of the amount of energy that's been put in there over centuries of people doing the energy in that same place over and over again, and it's that it's that, like say, the fingerprint. It's in essence. I mean, one of my teachers with FengShui would say that it's acupuncture for the home. It is the home. It's about aligning the home. When you align the home or align your place of work, because for a lot of people, they spend nearly as much time at work as they do at home. So it's important to have both places as aligned as possible.
100%. And often I hear it described as a house having a certain personality, and people will tell me this because and that is true. There are houses that are going to bring children to a couple, for example. There are houses that are going to create job promotion. There are houses that are going to create divorce. And essentially, the way I hear this from people is that people will say, "Oh, did you hear about so and so, so and so? They've just bought that house in such and such, and he's just lost his job." Or do you know he's just got a massive promotion? Or can you believe it? Thingy and Thingy bought that house only a few months ago, and now they're getting divorced. And this is how it happens in the conversation. And what's really happening is the house personality is in control, let's put it that way, of the people within it, because they themselves haven't taken control of the energy. As Oprah says, take control of the energy you bring into my space. It is your energy, you own it. There is an ownership element of it. And so what Feng Shui will do for a house that, say, for example, causes arguments between couples, is we will use the 5 elements to balance that. And so what we're really doing is, instead of making what could be a big train wreck or car crash, for example, we'll make it so it's just a road, a sleeping policeman, a hump in the road. And that is what we'll do through interior choices. And a way of doing that, for example, is in the southwest of the home, which is aligned to romance, for everybody. This is universal. If there is a high density of fire, for example, then we're going to find that the 2 people in a relationship in that property are going to naturally conflict. So we balance that back out with, in this case, because it's romance, earth. So it may be a case of choosing whatever the function of the room is, whether it's a kitchen, a bathroom, or a lounge room, or a bedroom, it doesn't matter. So, but say, let's take it's a dining room, for example, then we'd make sure that we're choosing, wooden-based dining table, wooden chairs. We're bringing some greenery into it, some, plants, real plants. So you've got that element of earth, so on and so forth. We would limit candles, for example, or the color red, which would stimulate fire. And potentially we might have a water-based picture on the wall to, again, put down the fire. So there are destruction cycles and production cycles. Same as if you have, for example, fire in wealth, it can cause quick money to come. Now, if you're a new business or you've just started a business, you would want that, right? So essentially we do the opposite. So we stimulate the fire. We give it, things to burn. We ensure that it's there driving that business forward, But most houses, on the whole, you have to do a complete chart to know exactly. So I can't give a generic answer, but most houses need metal. And that metal is around support, foundations, being strong. Most houses lack element metal, and if unsure, opt for more metal. So that would be the metal dining table, or the metal, or the grey. I mean, grey is so in vogue at the moment from an interior perspective that, and it's absolutely fantastic. It is every Feng Shui master's dream that grey is so popular. I don't know whether we have to thank the author of 50 Shades of Grey for starting that trend. I don't know. I don't care. But thank goodness grey is in, because we've gone a long way away from those earthy brown tones that we've seen for really a good 20 years. There have been so many creams, browns, coffees, lattes, taupes, all of those sorts of colours in the interior palette, and they all stimulate earth, which is great if you need earth. But for those who don't need earth, or whose earth is working against them, it can really make them very stuck. Literally that expression, stuck in the mud. And that's what a lot of people have been in their interiors in the past 20 years. So now we move to metal, which is strong foundations. Yay.
That's good. And funny for the Star Wars fans, like myself, we're about to the Last Jedi is going into the you've got the Sith, the Dark Lords, the dark side. You've got the Jedi, which is the light side. Then now the next you're about to move into the Grey Code. Funny enough, and the Grey Code are basically Daoists. Is the Grey Code balancing the dark and the light side? Is that the next movie coming out in December in the UK? It will be is that the light side, the Jedi, Luke Skywalker, finds this information that shows that you actually need both. You need the balance between the dark and the light, and from that the Grey Code is formed, and the Grey Code Jedi are the mixture between the light and the dark, and they're harnessing the two. But sorry, digress. Went off on a Star Wars tangent.
But suddenly Star Wars is interesting now to me.
Indeed. Yeah, well, there's a few of us. I have got some. Always know where your lightsaber is.
I actually do. I do possess one in my own house, but it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my son.
Well, I've got these. There's actually one. Oh, actually, you know him, Baz Chidia. We're actually looking long term. We're looking at setting up a lightsaber qigong school. So doing qigong energy exercises and lightsabers, because a lightsaber. Well, the word very quickly. The word Jedi actually comes from the Egyptian word de-Jedi, and de-Jedis were the keepers of the pillar of light.
Oh, that's interesting.
George Lucas used that for a very particular reason.
He knew that.
He knew that. Just like Darth Vader, German, Darth Vader is my father. There's lots of little things in there. So, but this is not the way of Star Wars. This is the way of. So
that would be a popular show, though.
Indeed. Oh, Star Wars and Feng Shui. That'd be an awesome show. But anyway.
Well, actually, talking of movies, Feng Shui is used a lot in movies, far more than we realise. And the reason is that it is with a movie. Think about going to the cinema and you're watching the big screen and everything like that. There is only so much acting the actors can do based on the script that they're given. So their interior, or the environment that they're set in, even whatever the background is, uses Feng Shui, because it is the unspoken text. It creates a feeling for people just by looking at it. And it also supports the actors in their work. So I won't name names because I'm not that type of person, but there have been a lot of movies that there's been a lot of fear that they might be box office flops, that have then contacted me to say, can you help the pre-production team to design the right backdrop for this particular scene? It's going to be set in a bedroom, or it's going to be set in a hall, or wherever it's going to be set, and they'll put the last level of detail down. And the feedback from the actors have been, especially when there's so much pressure on them, to make this the role of their career and this sort of thing. But they've said after they've shot the scenes, which I'm not necessarily there for, but the feedback has come to me is that they felt so comfortable in the set, that they were able then to really surrender themselves into the emotion and into the script and into delivering whatever it was they're trying to express to the audience. So Feng Shui, so it wouldn't surprise me if George, I have not worked with George Lucas, but you never know. But it wouldn't surprise me if that is put in there, because it's all about balancing colours and the energy of colours, and it's in everything and all that we do.
It is indeed. Right, I know you want to wrap up quite soon. So I just wanted to, because you mentioned it, and just for those who don't know, so you mentioned 5 elements. Now, obviously in the West, they only normally think of 4 elements. So what are the 5 elements that you're referring to?
So in traditional Feng Shui, well, in all of Feng Shui, Feng Shui means wind and water. And wind is a way of saying air. So when we talk about Feng Shui and we talk about the elements, we're really saying if you catch a piece of air and you look at that under a microscope, it will contain the following. And you can plot a graph for it mathematically based on the astrological charts. That's what we do. So the 5 elements as we look at them is obviously water. Water is to do with money, flow, abundance. Fire is another one. Earth. Wood is the one that most people don't see coming. And metal. Those are the 5 elements that we balance. And we deliberately split earth from wood because they can actually be used in very different ways. And actually, I would say to audience members that whatever answers you seek in life generally come from nature. In fact, all answers come from nature. If you spend enough time looking at nature and dropping your chaotic mind, not everyone has a chaotic mind, but if you can come out of that conscious thinking and step back away and relax in a nature space, you'll find a lot of answers that you seek come from there, because Feng Shui works in perfect harmony and balance in nature. It's only that we, chop and change buildings and put walls through the middle of sectors and all of this sort of thing. But the 9 sectors of Feng Shui are probably useful to know as well. So the 9 sectors of Feng Shui include career, fame. Fame is reputation, how others perceive you. Romance, wealth, family, children, knowledge, that's what's between your ears and how you use it. And mentors. Mentors is to do with leadership. So you as a leader and your ability to be led. Both are important. And there's not, a lot of people will prioritize the wealth sector or the romance or the career, but in truth, they're actually all equal. And if you're designing a house, you get to obviously make it make more sense in the fact that you would put the master bedroom in the sector of romance, for example. But regardless of what is where, you can Feng Shui a cardboard box. Even if you live in one room in a house, you can identify where the southwest is, so you know, right, well, that is my romance, that is my love life, that is my connection to others in an intimate way. And then the opposite of that, so behind that is your wealth. So, so if the bank is a bit low this particular week, whatever, look at the wealth. Does it need tidying? Does it need cleaning? Have you got things there that don't need to be there? Do you have anything activating it? Try a week with a candle and then try a week with a plant and tell me which was more profitable for you. And that will help you identify what's going on in that southeast section. You know, but it's about tuning into that energy vibration and then maximizing it for the biggest outcome potential.
That's cool. That's very, very cool. Right, so you want to wrap up soon, yes?
Unfortunately, I have to go to work.
Yes.
And clients are waiting, and anyway, I've managed to do this, so I'm absolutely delighted.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure that to have this show with you. We had a few technical difficulties at the beginning, but we made it. We got through.
We did, and I'm happy to talk about Feng Shui anywhere, at any time, with anyone. If you ever need me to talk about it again, I'm more than happy. The more we talk about it, the more we implement it into our lives, the more that we are really ascending as a race.
Yeah, very much. I 100% agree and believe in that fully. It's all information is good information, and it's all about growing and ascending indeed. So what we'll do, we'll close it off, and then I'll talk to you before.
Yeah, no worries. Right,
so guys, thank you so much. It's a bit of a quick show this week, but I hope you enjoyed it. I'm not about next week. I'm working as well. I'm working next week on something else, so I won't be about. But we will have a show. Can't think off the top of my head who it is, but we will have a show in 2 weeks' time. In 2 Thursdays' time, there will be a show. It will be on the fan page. I'll put it on my profile. The live feed for the link will be set up soon within the next couple of days on YouTube. So if you're watching, if you're listening to this on podcast, hope you enjoyed it. Take care, and same with YouTube. So for now, I'd like to again one more time thank you so much to Janeen for doing this show. It's been very enlightening. Loved it dearly. So it's thank you for Janeen. Thank you for myself. So take care. Bye for now. Love, Chi, and Chen from the Way of Conscious Mindfulness. Bye-bye.